First of all, I want to begin by thanking Srikanth and his team and CII for thinking of me and giving me this opportunity this morning to spend some time with you and share some of my thoughts on leadership. Thank you, Srikanth. I think this is so wonderful. He kept expanding the time that is given to me. It's very nice of him. It started with half an hour. Now it is 50 minutes. I think I have 50 minutes. And I'm not very sure, although it's very nice in the morning to give a good conceptual kind of a presentation on leadership. I thought I'll begin by sharing with you some of my experiences. So Srikanth did say that you should give some case studies. I said if I pick up one case study that is good enough for the entire hour, because I am Ahmedabad, which had tremendous influence on me, is very good in case method, and case method means 1 full hour. So I decided not to do that. So that's why no reading, but PowerPoint will be available to you, those of you who are interested later. 3 of my experiences I thought I would begin. I was thinking that maybe that these experiences can be used later to draw upon in terms of the issues that have been so beautifully presented in the brochure that has been prepared by CII HR team. The first is a very interesting case. These are all my personal encounters, and this encounter was with a senior vice president commercial who became senior vice president chartered accountant. He was working with a family-owned business group, which later became a multinational company across the world, fairly well known. I'll not take the name. In that particular company, nobody became vice president commercial until he reached the age of about 45 to 50, but this gentleman became at the age of 37, chartered accountant. Every 2 years he got promotion. This is because he was very meticulous, very loyal, very honest, with high integrity, and very hardworking. And you know, commercial managers will have to, or chartered accountants, others have to all the time deal with figures. No mistake escaped his attention. He is quite known for catching mistakes and good in submitting accounts on time, managing the finances, managing collections, everything and so on. So the chairman of the group was obviously very happy and kept on promoting him every 2 years. And when you are in the good books of the chairman and when you get promoted every 2 years, you know what happens. Nobody dares to speak a word against him, howsoever uncomfortable you may feel. He would go to office. If the office begins at 9 o'clock, he will go at about 8 o'clock, and if it closes at 5:30 or 6, he will be there till 7:30, 8 o'clock. And normally he expected people also to come as early as he was there and leave as after he leaves, which was somewhat difficult for other people to do. The person who had the biggest trouble with him was the HR head. This is because every time the HR head posted people in that commercial department, they will either apply for leave and want a transfer to some of the other units or quit. And he gets the flack from the senior vice president commercial that what kind of people are you getting, what are you doing, what you HR fellows are hopeless, and so on and so forth. So the HR manager felt the problem is not with the people, the problem is with the senior vice president commercial. How do I tell him that while he has many good qualities, he has some qualities which are not appreciated by people. And one of the qualities is he loses he's short-tempered, loses his cool. The good point, he is very meticulous and finds mistakes is a bad point for the juniors who work with him. Because everyone goes to office with a fear that that day they are going to have something from him. Because some mistake they will make and then he'll criticize and so on. So morale was low, transfer rate was high, attrition was high, and the HR manager felt that it is very difficult to communicate to the senior vice president commercial. How do I tell him? Because every 2 years when he talked to the juniors, they said that, look, he became senior vice president commercial, he is only 37, for next 23 years our future is blocked. No point working here, there is no succession planning, nothing is possible. Why should we work hard? He goes at 8 o'clock, that is fine. But we don't have to. He is married to the office, but we have other people with whom we have married. And we don't want to be doing this kind of a thing and so on. But he can't go and tell the senior vice president commercial that, look, your style is a problem. So one fine morning, he came across an announcement on 360-degree feedback, which we were running. We actually started 360-degree feedback when it was not known. In IIM Ahmedabad, in 1986, we introduced a program called Leadership Styles and Organizational Effectiveness. This is 1986. It is only in 1991 somebody called it in US 360. They have not copied us. They came with their own kind of innovations. But they're very good in terms of branding. You know, come up with anything, you put a title and copyright it and brand it and so on. Of course, now we use it across the world. So I was using this methodology sometime in the late 90s. In fact, one of the reasons why after I left IIM, this was something which I was passionate about and promoting this. So this gentleman, the HR head, saw this brochure and he said, the 360-degree program seems to be a very interesting program, sir. You are Senior Vice President Commercial, and if you go through this program, it will help you to discover what you are good at, what you are weak at, and it will help you to multiply your leadership talent. So this gentleman, Senior Vice President Commercial, went through the brochure and then called the HR head and asked him a few questions. And the questions were like this. He asked him, Mr. Das, I'm just taking a name, don't look for Dases who are HR managers. Okay. Mr. Das, how many years have I been with this company? He said, sir, last 18 years. How many promotions have I got? Das started getting worried. Now, what is he asking these questions? You got, every 2 years you got a promotion. How many senior vice presidents are there in this whole group who are of my age? He said, none, sir. What is the gap between my age and the next senior vice president commercial's age in this entire group? He said, I am not very sure, but I think about 15 years. And how many people have you posted in the last 3 years in my department? He counted it, he said some 11 people. How many of them are still there? Only 3 or 4 are there. Now tell me, you say 360-degree feedback will help me to discover my strengths and weaknesses. Who needs 360-degree feedback? You? Or all those people whom you have posted who don't stay around, or those who stay here? I mean, obviously, he is saying that, look, all the fellows who have no commitment to this company need 360-degree feedback, or you don't know how to post right people, you need 360-degree feedback, and don't tell me that I need this kind of a 360-degree feedback. So he threw the paper and he said, go and talk to somebody. This is not, I think you better go if you are so interested. So Das called me up, he said, Professor Rao, I think it's a very difficult situation, I don't know. He told me the entire story. The problem is he is coercive, he is short-tempered, he is very hardworking, but he picks up people and then creates all kinds of issues and so on. So it so happened the chairman of the group was interested in 360-degree feedback for the entire group. We were discussing. So I gave this little piece of information to Das and told Mr. Das, you go to the Senior Vice President Commercial and tell him I had a word with Professor Rao. I wanted to sponsor myself, but he said that, look, your chairman is thinking, where do you want to sponsor yourself? Wait till the chairman takes a decision. So, sir, the chairman is going to ask for 360 anyway. My suggestion to you is that since you are a good advisor to the chairman, why don't you go through the 360 feedback and advise the chairman whether he should be spending so much of money on 360-degree feedback for the entire team or not. Now, this caught the attention of the Senior Vice President Commercial. If that is so, people who are in the good books of chairman want to all the time please the chairman. This is also one of the good things, you know. You get empowered by empowering the chairman. It's a mutual empowerment that goes on. And poor HR fellow is the only one who doesn't get empowered because he had to keep struggling for leadership tools to get himself empowered and so on. So it worked, and then the chap said, all right. Now 360-degree feedback requires anonymous feedback from those who are working currently with you, with your seniors, and includes some of those people who worked with you in the last 2 to 3 years to get your experiences. So we sent out the questionnaires. And normally, we don't give 360-degree feedback just as a feedback by collecting the averages and then pass it on to them. We conduct a 2 to 3 day workshop. That is the way IIM Ahmedabad started. We called people, one full day we explained to them the tools and the importance of feedback. And one of the things we tell them is, if somebody rates you low, do not get upset. In fact, you should be thankful to that person. A low rating indicates high expectations. So appreciate the fellow who gives you a low rating. And a fellow who gives you high rating is saying that you can't improve anymore. I think you are already doing your best. So, I mean, that is the way we interpret. It is very important to tell people how to use this feedback and so on. So, one full day we gave the lecture, and on the second day morning we normally give feedback to him. So, as soon as he got the feedback, we give about half an hour to think about, reflect, and after half an hour we say, you have any questions? And the gentleman in the class got up and flared up and saying that, look, professor, I told my HR manager, I am not the person who should come for a program like this. Now, my apprehensions are true. Look at all what people have written. They are all written, all kachra, nonsense kind of a thing they have written. So what have they written? So they have written saying that I am coercive, I am short-tempered, and I am in the good books of the chairman, and of course, I am very meticulous, and so many, I don't smile, and I don't do this, I don't do that, and all kinds of things. I said, oh, is that all? I said, most shocking thing he said was that when a question you asked them, would you still like to continue to work with him? 90% of them said that they don't like working with me. Only 10%. I mean, this is pathetic, professor. How can I rely on this? Look at my record last few years. Every 2 years I got promotion. There is nobody else who is as young as I am. And ask the chairman, look at the financial performance. Everything is wonderful. How do I take this feedback as credible kind of a thing? Of course, then I asked him, is that all they have written? Is there anything more? Can you read out if there is something positive? He said, so many positive things they have written, but I don't care about them. I said, that is a problem. You are not caring about the positive things. You are only looking at the negative things, and you are not even willing to look at the negative things. Let us listen to the positive things. They say, I am loyal, I am technically competent, I am meticulous, I am hardworking, I am sincere, I am a person with high integrity, character, so many good things. So you should feel proud that you are all this. But imagine that what can happen if you can also work on one or two things, which you accept. You don't have to accept every feedback that is given to them. Don't worry about it. He said, no, I don't buy all this kind of a thing. And privately he told me, because that program consisted of a large number of people from other companies, he said that, Professor, I have seen many of these participants from other companies. In fact, if you ask me, I can't understand how some of them have become general managers and even directors in their companies. They don't have half the knowledge I have. They are not very articulate, and they are not dynamic. And I am not very impressed with these people. But Professor, one thing I am puzzled. Most of them manage to get very good positive feedback. I have not got it. How did they manage such positive feedback? I mean, there was a question mark for him. And on the last day, he said that, Professor, one thing I have learned, maybe I am not spending enough time in good human relations. Maybe I should think about it. I was not very hopeful on the third day as he was leaving, but only this one sentence said, there is some hope. 6 months later, the company called me to visit the plant and then conduct a 360-degree feedback for this entire team and so on. When I went there, they gave me a big party and everyone started complimenting me and asking me, what magic have you done? This person is a totally changed person. I said, I have not done any magic. In fact, I have no hope of this person, but you tell me what happened. He said, sir, most significant behavior change we found in him. He never used to smile earlier. Now he smiles. Big change we found in him. He smiles. And he comes and stops at our desk. If we make a mistake, he still loses his cool, but after a few minutes, he comes back and sits with us and starts analyzing this. He has become very informal. He started taking tea, coffee with us. He was having a lot of informal atmosphere, get-togethers and so on. It's a big change, and that is why we think this is a great tool. 3 years later, he became the MD of that particular company, and his unit top in the organizational climate survey of the entire conglomerate, that unit top, and he was rated as a responsible kind of a person for this. Very interesting story. There are many lessons from this. The style-related thing, the content-related thing, and so on. I will try to draw upon this a little later. I will mention a short story, a second story. This is a family-owned business house of 4 brothers who are running a multi-product, multi-location, multi-agency kind of a company. This particular company, all these 4 brothers, the eldest brother is the chairman of the company. He was in charge of some of the financial services. The second brother is an introvert, and he was put in charge of the travel business, They had a lot of resorts, they have a lot of hotels, travel and all these kind of things. He was put in charge and the business was not growing, was not having much of a share. The third brother was an extrovert and he was put in charge of a pharma as well as tea estates that they have had. And fourth brother is very fond of training and he was put in charge of HR and things like that. But there was a separate professional HR director who was managing this whole kind of a company. This entire team went through a 360-degree feedback, and then I was sitting with the eldest brother, and the feedback came very clearly saying that the second brother, who is supposed to be an introvert, is a very big mismatch for the kind of business he was holding. And the third brother was also a mismatch, and the fourth brother could be better utilized in terms of strategic planning and things of that nature. So this was very interesting, and the chairman of the company, the eldest brother, told me, Professor Rao, all this we know. The 360-degree feedback only proves this. Now I have a tool in my hand. The tool is the 360-degree feedback. We also administered MBTI to them. MBTI also proved that the introverted brother is highly introverted, and therefore his scores are, there is a score. Extrovert brother is extroverted, he has a score. He said this profile is perfectly matching. Now the problem that I have is, how do I tell them? I have known this, I can't tell them. Now that you have a tool with you, can you help in coaching, working with them to say that they should seek change? They are not seeking change, they are enjoying whatever they are doing. So the problem is, I as an eldest brother, if they seek change, it will find it very easy for me. So please, can you do coaching? So I did that part of it, and I think the brothers were convinced that they probably would do well. They had a meeting and then they expressed their desire to swap. Whatever, I think that, it's not very easy to swap for people who have actually accumulated power in whatever they're doing. They feel happy. And they swapped, and about 3 years later, this particular business, I think, prospered phenomenally well. Very good kind of a change that has taken place. Now, this again is a very interesting kind of a lesson. What are some of the lessons for leadership? I want to draw a little later. The third one is a very quick one, which I keep talking about it. This is a Indian professionally managed company. They needed a vice president marketing. And they looked around, and one fine morning they decided they will pick up one of the toppers from CII Ahmedabad. The person happened to be my student, one particular year, I wouldn't name, you'll find out who this person is, between 1985 and 89, during one of those years. So he was picked up and he was put as vice president marketing. It's a huge company. He was getting a fat salary, almost about 50 to 60 lakhs of rupees in those days. This was about 8-9 years ago. And I was doing a little bit of work with that company. I had 3 times encounter with him. Encounter was 2 months after he joined, then the encounter about 3 to 4 months after he joined, and 6 months after he joined. And since I knew him well, I was constantly asking him, how is he finding this company, since I'm doing a lot of work with the company. After 2 months, he said, I'm just getting to know the company. I'm just finding various things. I'm traveling to different places. I'm talking to other kind of people. I'm just getting to know the company. And 4 months later, when I met him, he said that I am now planning an agenda. I'm getting to know, but I'm planning an agenda in terms of what needs to be. I need to check with all the people and so on. 6 months later, when I met him, he said that I found my feet now. I am ready to contribute. 1.5 years later, he was planning to leave. 2 years later, he left the company. Now, this is a very interesting kind of a story. Why does it need 6 months for a vice president marketing, a topper from IIM Ahmedabad, to find his feet and begin to contribute after 6 months, and after 1.5 years, think of planning to leave? Does it need? Because I believe that first 6 months have crippled his leadership competencies. If in the first few months, if they are able to use his leadership competencies, he would not have left. And you go at length to get a person with very high kind of a salary, and and the results are not only tangible results. The next sentence says, organizational culture, purpose, values, critical action plans, and above all, execution excellence, and deeply impacted by leaders. They are all impacted. So leaders make organizations happen. Building leadership pipeline is an important element of leaders. I'm sure some of you heard of the more interesting book, Leadership Engine. This is the term that I have added to what has been said there. These are the foundational elements of a successful organization that aims at sustainable profit and growth. After having given these cases, these are the 4 things I'm going to talk of. Quickly, I will cover a few approaches. There are thousands and thousands of approaches to leadership and studies. I'm not going to do all that. I'm going to talk of those kind of approaches which I am familiar with, I am very impressed with. And we'll talk of already, Srikanth touched upon this, leadership development. Can leadership be developed? Then the importance of leadership styles and how do you measure leadership. These are the kind of things that I would like to talk about. Now the first thing that I like to talk of, my first encounter with the leadership was David McClelland's work. Very interesting work. My encounter with McClelland's work was mostly in the beginning on teaching, developing entrepreneurship. I'm sure some of you have heard of, sometime in mid-50s, he discovered that those economies that have prospered between 1920s and 1950s, about a 30-year follow-up study indicated, those economies that have progressed well during those 30-year period were the economies where children were told different kind of stories. The children's stories in those economies that have economically prospered consisted of achievement motivation. The hero always accomplishes something unique, something different, and so on. Those countries that did not progress well were either dominated by power motivation or largely affiliation motivation. They like relationships, they are relationship driven and things like that. So he wrote a wonderful book called The Achieving Society, sometime in the year 1960, which I think economists in those days criticized it very much because he used cross-national comparison, he used per capita consumption of power as an indicator. Economists said this is kachra. In those days, this PPP, dollar equivalent and other things were not known. But I think almost about 40 years later, the same economists who criticized him started adopting per capita consumption of power as a good indicator of economic development of a nation and so on. It's a very interesting kind of thing. So people think psychologists are not good economists. I think psychologists are great economists. Like Mahatma Gandhi, I think, is a great economist. Many things that he preached, if we follow it, I think you can see the economic value of his preachings and so on. Now, McClelland, sometime by but late 60s, started finding that if you are achievement driven, you will become an entrepreneur, all right. But if you continue to be only achievement driven, you may not become a successful entrepreneur. So he didn't say you won't, you may not. And he said the reason is that if you are only personal achievement driven, you will find it difficult to delegate. You will find wanting to do everything by yourself. As a result, your people will not grow. So he came up with a very interesting article which he wrote in Harvard Business Review called Power is the Great Motivator, where he said that if you want to be an institutional manager, that is the term that he has used, or a successful entrepreneur or institution builder, you have to have achievement motivation, but you have to have power, and again he differentiated power. Power he called as personal power, power that is used for self-aggrandizement, and power that is used for larger purposes, organization building and so on. So he said if you are social power oriented with achievement driven and a moderate to low affiliation, you are likely to be successful. In fact, when he came to India, 1974, he visited, I used to teach a course called LAM, Laboratory in Entrepreneurial Motivation. He came and lectured to all IIM students, and at that point of time, he pointed out that his findings are very similar to what Uday Parikh in mid-60s called as extension motivation. Uday Parikh coined the term extension motivation, which indicated that leaders or social change occurs if people are concerned about giving themselves for a larger cause. That was a very interesting kind of thing. So McClelland said, social power is giving yourself for a larger cause, which is an organizational cause and so on. Why I'm saying all this, it was at this time I happened to have the privilege of working with McClelland. He invited me to go to Harvard, and I carried a lot of TAT stories from India, from IIM Ahmedabad and various places we collected. TAT stories are your shown pictures, you are asked to write stories, and your stories are indicative of the way you think. And we analyzed the stories, and we found in India, managers exhibit 3 types of leadership. And it exactly coincided with an interesting theory that he was talking about. He came up with a Freudian analysis of leadership. He said those people who are oral leaders, who are stuck in the oral stage. Sigmund Freud talks of oral, anal, phallic, and genital, 4 stages of growth as a child. So oral leaders are the ones who are paternalistic. They speak a lot. They speak a lot. They use mouth, means you speak a lot. You are a charismatic leader, and you do successful. You are very successful. Like, I think if you look at the Indian family-owned business organizations, most of them you find as paternalistic leaders. They are very successful. But if you are only a paternalistic leader, you create dependence. Lot of admiration for you, but people will work only out of admiration for the paternalistic leader, not out of kind of a joy. Then he talked of second, critical leader, which again I found very much in the Indian setup, where the leader looks at everyone with suspicion, like the theory X of McGregor we talked of. Look at with suspicion and so on. So these are critical leaders. They reprimand, they criticize, they use direction, they use power, they use authority. Now these people create resentment. They may succeed in the short run, but in the long run they have problems. They are very good in turning around if a company is indisciplined. But in the long run, if they continue with it, I think there is a morale and other kind of issues that come up. The third one he talked of as self-dispensing leader. And this is what I learned here in IIM Ahmedabad from Vikram Sarabhai and Ravi Mathai. They always talked of self-dispensing leader. Vikram Sarabhai is mostly honorary director. He was all the time. He built the institute, got Ravi Mathai, and then left the scene. Ravi Mathai, after 7 years, he could have been lifetime director. He said that, no, I'm not going to be here. And one fine morning, after the institute stabilized, he appointed a committee to review itself. And then he said that, now I'm going to do other kind of things. He kept aside his director's position. He, in fact, said that I stepped out. And then he kept on working on totally different kind of areas of professional management. So on. Abdul Kalam talks of very interesting cases of institution builders and so on. Now, these all we came to know later, but McClelland's article, Power is a Great Motivator, is a very interesting article which talks of, if you want to be a good leader, you have to be concerned with empowering people who work with you. And number 2, most important contribution of McClelland was, since he found it difficult to compare results of different companies. You can't compare one company working in steel industry with another company working in pharma, and a third company in IT, and a fourth company in financial services, fifth in insurance and things of that kind, because they are all subject to different contextual kind of factors. But he found a common thing to measure in all this. If employees have good morale, now he used an organizational climate as an index, the satisfaction levels of people, empowerment levels of people, and things of that kind. That was a great innovation that he has done. So this is a very interesting article. I would strongly recommend some of you, if you have not read this, 1974 article, Harvard Business Review. So this is a very interesting, I was very influenced by this McClelland's approach. And I developed a tool to measure these 3 types of leadership styles. I've used it in medical officers in Uttar Pradesh. Beginning 1975, 1976, I conceptualized this whole thing and created 3 types of leadership styles. Paternalistic style, which I called as benevolent style. Second is the critical style. Fourth, instead of calling it self-dispensing style, I called it as a developmental style. We can call it HRD style, empowering style, and so on. And we have done lots of research.